Hey everyone! So in this video I want to talk a little bit about feeling all of our feelings and how we can actually allow ourselves to do that. Because I think in theory it sounds like a nice idea, but actually when it comes to allowing ourselves to feel what can be some quite overwhelming emotions, that actually it can feel harder in practice than it does on paper. So when it comes to allowing ourselves to feel overwhelmed and allow ourselves to feel some of those big emotions that actually we've trained ourselves to not deal with, that actually they're the ones that we want to kind of run away from and not deal with at all costs, that actually we can allow ourselves to feel them, and that actually even though we might feel very overwhelmed, and even though it might even result in us kind of feeling physically exhausted, and that we might even need to kind of take time off from whatever we're doing, and that it means that we can't actually carry on with what we had planned for that day or even that week, that actually that is still okay, and that doesn't need to be a reason for us to shut down, or rather it doesn't need to be a reason for us to run in the opposite direction and to not allow ourselves to feel those things. That is still okay, even if it means that, as I said, we can't do everything that we wanted to do. Because what's the alternative? And I was thinking about this the other day, and it really struck me that if we don't allow ourselves to feel everything, which is what life is all about. Life isn't about feeling happy all the time, it's about feeling everything, which is my favourite quote from Glennon Doyle's book, Untamed. And if we don't allow ourselves to feel those things, even if it does feel like it kind of knocks the feet from underneath us, then actually that's when we end up in a position where we're bottling those emotions and feelings up, and that's when we turn to coping strategies to deal with them, or bury them, or numb them, which is what eating disorders are, which is what alcoholism is, it's what gambling is, it's what a kind of obsessive shopping is. It's a way of giving us that, what we feel is a quick release, and it gives us that temporary relief from feeling overwhelmed. But actually it's not a solution. It actually doesn't give us that opportunity to let everything out, and it doesn't allow us to feel that kind of sometimes overwhelming cocktail of emotions that's going on inside of us. And even though that, I mean, I've had plenty of experience of this, of trying to numb those feelings, that it's not sustainable. It's really not. And for a while I thought that it was the better option, that it meant that I didn't have to go there with those feelings that I just didn't want to feel. I would have done anything not to feel those things. But actually what happens when we numb things, we numb those emotions and we run away from them and we try and bury them, that it's like trying to keep a beach ball under the water, that actually we're pushing it down and pushing it down, pushing it down, and eventually it's going to pop up and smack us in the face. And that's what kept happening to me, that I would bury and bury and bury and numb and do all of those things in order to not feel. And then I would be completely swept away when it actually got to a point that I couldn't hold it back any longer. And so it's like I was experiencing life like this, that it was always about the extremes. And so actually what I'm experiencing now is, now that I allow myself to feel my emotions when they come along, rather than trying to run away from them all the time, or feel that I have to numb them or bury them, that actually they're feeling a lot more like this now. They're much more steady, they're much more manageable. And even though it might be that this is kind of the normal, and then it might be that on one day I'm feeling really overwhelmed, and that's where I have that kind of spike. But actually, even in those moments, it's knowing that I can still come back from that. I can still cope with that. And that I don't need to revert to my previous behaviours in order to get through it and cope with it. I mean, we often reuse the quotes, our experience, oh, how does it go? Our track record for getting through tough days is 100% so far, and that's pretty good. And it's exactly the same with experiencing our feelings, that you've got through life experiencing everything, all of the extremes that you've experienced so far, and you're still standing. And so actually, we often have this voice in our head saying that we can't cope. But that's just not true. Our resilience is inbuilt. That's never going to go away. It's only ever this voice that's telling us that we can't cope. So I'd love you just to consider that, and feel free to share any thoughts or comments in the comments below, and I'll see you again next time.